another minute or two to go ahead and sign in, but we appreciate you coming in for this edition of our parent training series. And like I said, we'll get started in the next 2 minute or two. So just hold tight. Okay. My name is Sue Ownby. I am the parent liaison with Knox County Schools, and I would like to tell you how excited we are that you have come to join us in this training. We're very excited to have Karen Harrison. She is the executive director of Tennessee STEP and has been for a number of years. I've always really appreciated all the hard work that Tennessee STEP does. I do just want to do a little commercial and remind people that we are also having our in-person event that's going to be Thursday at Bearden High School, and that is our family information fair. And that will be an opportunity for everybody to meet a lot of the providers in the community, both in the community and at the school system. And so we hope that we see you there at Bearden High School. It is on, like I said, Thursday the 24th, and that is going to be from 5 o'clock until 7. So that being said, Karen, we're very excited to hear, and I know you have a lot to share, so I'm going to go ahead and let you get started. Thank you so much.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. As Sue said, I'm Karen Harrison, and I am the Executive Director of TNSTEP. And you may have known us for many years as STEP, and we rebranded. So we're all working on TNSTEP. But so glad, Sue, that you asked me to join you today to talk about parent advocacy. This is one of my favorite topics to engage in discussions about. And I am first and foremost a parent of a now young adult with special needs, and have navigated the system of special education for many years with her, and then into the adult systems of vocational rehabilitation and other things as she exited high school. But it's so very important, this topic of how to effectively communicate with your school team about the needs of your child or your children, and some ways that you can advocate for them. So I am going to share a bunch of tips with you today on how to build relationships with educators, voice your concerns effectively, and advocate for your child's needs. Now, you may have more questions when we're done than you have now, and that's okay. That just means that you're thinking and you're processing, and that's the way all of us learn, is processing information, asking questions. And the good news is that TNSTEP is here for you. Sue and her team are available. And as you're thinking through and applying these concepts and these processes, we are here to help you as the situations come up and you are trying to apply this information to your particular situation. So we are the Parent Training and Information Center for Tennessee, and we serve Tennessee families and caregivers who have children birth through age 26 with a diagnosed or suspected disability or special health care or mental health care need. And we do believe that parents and caregivers are their children's best advocates. So what we do is provide information on the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, other particular laws and policies that impact children and youth with disabilities, and how to navigate those processes across Tennessee. We provide a lot of workshops. We have a YouTube channel. You'll see some of that at the end if you haven't visited our YouTube channel. We have workshops on IEPs and 504s, how to share parent concerns, transition to adult life, transition from early childhood, a lot of different trainings and workshops that you can access. And all of our services are free to families. So any service that we have, you can access that throughout East Tennessee and across the state. So we are going to be talking about the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, and that is one of our main purposes, is to help families navigate and understand this law that was designed with the purpose to ensure that all children with disabilities have available to them a free, appropriate public education that emphasizes special education and related services that are designed to meet the unique needs of children and prepare them for education, employment, and independent living. So I love the I in individualized education programs and IEPs, and there are no one size fits all. And that's what this is about, is how to advocate for those unique and individual needs that that your child has, and how they can get the most appropriate education to prepare them, because it comes really fast, life after high school, getting those pieces into place. I think we were going to mention that if you have questions, feel free to put those in the chat box. We will be taking time to answer questions. If you have a burning question, put it in there. We'll definitely work to get to all of the questions, and want this to be as interactive as we can, given that we're miles apart and on screens. So feel free to type your questions in the chat box as we go along. Also, I'm going to try to give some examples of advocacy strategies for early childhood, elementary, middle school, high school, because I'm not able to ask everyone what are the ages of your children, and know if we have predominantly high school families or others. So I'll just give examples all across the age bands there, and you can then use those as examples for your particular situation. Just so you know, the very first thing is to make sure that your child is eligible for an individualized education plan. And the assumption is that people that are joining this probably already have an IEP. But if you don't, it's really important to know that there is a process, and there are timelines to go along with that. And on our TNSTEP website, which is tnstep.info, there is an eligibility guide that talks about initial eligibility, the timelines for that, and then also if your child is due for a reevaluation, or you feel like they need some areas to be reevaluated in order for them to have a more effective education. There are questions and answers on that handout as well. We're not going to go a lot into this, but just these are the categories of eligibility. And Tennessee has a couple of categories that they have added that are not federal. But in any case, with a child with special needs, if you suspect that they have a disability and need specially designed instruction, it is a two-pronged test. They have to meet the criteria as established by the Department of Education, and then they have to need specially designed instruction. And so those would be the things that you're talking about at your IEP team meeting, or requesting in writing a special education evaluation. And we have trainings just on that piece. So we really believe, as I said at the beginning, that you are your child's best advocate. And so being prepared to advocate takes some time and energy, and knowing the questions to ask, because this is a journey that is very different. If you have children without disabilities and children with special needs and disabilities, the journeys are quite different. And so what we want you to know is that being an active part of your IEP team means being prepared. And so that's what some of these strategies that we're going to give you will hopefully prepare you to be more effective as you are working with that team to advocate for the things that your child needs. Very important, because you as a parent have insights into your child, how they do things, how they react to things, the ways that they learn best. And as part of that team, your knowledge is invaluable in helping to plan that appropriate goals and appropriate education for your child. So we're going to start off with just a couple of questions as an activity. And these questions, I'd like you to ponder them. If you have a pencil and paper in front of you and you'd like to jot down some of your things that just come to the top of your mind when you see these questions. What do you think about when you think about your child and the IEP planning process? So here's a couple of questions that might get us started in this realm of thinking about what's next and what do I want for my child and what do they need in their IEP. So what do you want your child to be able to do that they can't do now? What skills will your child need to increase their independence? And what are children without disabilities doing or learning that you would like to see your child do or learn? So just take a couple minutes there and think about those questions as a springboard for the rest of these advocacy tips that we're going to be talking about.
Karen, we don't see your screen.
Oh, you're not seeing my screen at all as I've been going through all of these?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, we had it up there earlier and I don't know where it went. So let's just. Okay. Are you seeing it now?
No, we're not. We just see you.
When we practiced this, it worked perfectly earlier. So where is that PowerPoint? We're going to try this one more time. Well, those are still the questions. I've said them out loud.
There, now we can see it.
All right. So we are going to fast forward through these that you didn't see: who we are, what we do, how do we help, IDEA, the referral process, and you are your child's best advocate. Thank you for letting me know that. And here are those planning questions. So now that you've had just a couple minutes while we were, some people said they were seeing it. I could see it. I was seeing it before. Okay, well now hopefully we're all seeing it. So if anyone would like to just quickly share something that came to the top of your mind for one of these questions, put that in the chat box, and we might be able to use that as a springboard for part of our discussion. Anything that came to mind on one of these questions? We'll just give you a minute to share in the chat box if you'd like to. Okay, we have perform at grade level. Anybody else? I know it takes a moment to type and share. So the things that you might have written down there or that you might ponderize and come up with, we have another one: increase social interaction. Perfect. These are the things that become your priority list for your IEP planning. And so this information will guide the IEP process. And so what you want to think about is this already addressed in your child's IEP? So for the example of increased social interaction, are there social skills in the IEP now? Are they very specific? Do you have a present level of performance? And then do you have where you'd like to go? Do you have some data to drive that discussion? And that is the first step, is making sure that it's in your IEP. And if it's not, then that's the question that you're going to bring to the IEP team is, I want to talk about my child's social interaction with their peers. What are the barriers and what are the goals that we need to put in here? Performing at grade level, certainly we're going to talk a little bit about data, but that is one of the most important things, is to look at where is your child performing now in compared to their peers, and how do we close that achievement gap. Tennessee has a big push to close the achievement gap between children with disabilities and those without disabilities. And so looking at that data, asking the school to show you how the goals that they have set out and the instruction that your child's receiving is going to help close that achievement gap. And sometimes when you look at the data, you need something more intensive. And that's where these advocacy strategies that we're going to share through the rest of this time are going to help inform that. Thank you, Brandon, for sharing transferring behavior and skills learned in school to their home life. And that should definitely could be something that would be considered in the IEP team, is having those skills that they can use across settings. And so looking at your IEP and seeing, does it have those terms in there? And what does that child need to be able to transfer those skills and use them at home, at school, and in their community as well? So do they need some visual supports, the same that they're using it at school for home, to help prompt the transfer of those behaviors? All of that can be written into the IEP, and supplementary aids and services for the school and for the student. And we will talk about in just a moment related services. And the related services in the IP could be parent training, and that could be written in that you are going to receive instruction as a parent how to help transfer those skills that they are learning to the home setting as well. And running the Parent Training Information Center, you might guess that parent training related service is one of my favorites. But for example, if your child is learning and using sign language at school, part of your parent training, it might be written into the IP that they're going to provide you training on the signs that your child is using. Same thing with the behavior plan. If they're using specific behavior interventions, teaching you how they're using those, what reward systems, how do you be consistent across settings so that you can transfer those skills and your young person can be successful across settings. So remember also that we're looking at high expectations, and that is something that is very important. So it's not how is your child doing compared to other students with disabilities. It's how is your child doing compared to students who do not have disabilities, and then raising that bar and thinking about how do we close that achievement gap. So it's not whether your child is the best color in the comprehensive segregated class, but how do other kids without disabilities, what are their skill sets? What are their academic and functional skills that you want to work on? So thank you for participating in that. And keep those questions handy. We will be providing this presentation to you afterwards, along with some of these other materials that we're going to be sharing. So thinking through the process of what are your concerns for your child's education? And sometimes at IEPT meetings, they'll say, okay, what are your parent concerns? And so being prepared ahead of time, what are your concerns? It could be social skills. I'm concerned my child's not making friends. You want to be very specific when you're talking about that portion of the IEP that says, what are the concerns of the parent? Not just saying I want my child to do well in school, but I'm concerned that my child doesn't have any friends yet, and I want them to have social interactions and build friendships, and then you can write goals about that. Academics, be specific. I'm concerned that my child's not reading yet, or I'm concerned that they have not made anticipated progress in reading and math. What can we do to close that gap? Safety, this is sometimes an area that is not considered as much as you want your child to be safe at school. So maybe you're concerned that they're being bullied. And each one of these things has an impact on their education, whatever that impact might be. And if your child is feeling like anxious over something that's happening in the school, or they're not feeling safe, then they are not going to be able to fully access the instruction that is happening around them. And therefore, that is denying them of their free, appropriate public education. So every one of these things, talking about how does this impact my child's education? Communication, is your child able to communicate not just what they need and want, but also what they know and can do? So looking at how is your child communicating that they're learning particular content and having a way to communicate. Behavior, if you have concerns about your child's behavior, that it's interfering with their learning, again, that's another thing that might be happening, and you could address this. Self-help skills, these could be dressing or self-care, and then functional skills. Maybe they are having trouble with focusing in the classroom, and the team needs to look at that and put some modifications, accommodations, goals, and objectives into the IEP for those types of things. So these are some springboards to get you thinking about, because when it comes that part in the IEP, describe the concerns you have for your child's education. Education is not just reading, writing, and math. It's everything that has to do with your child's school day. And even those examples that the three that popped up there, social, grade level performance, and transferring of skills, all of those are education, not just academics. So some of the things that we want to consider is how the student will build friendships. These are really the kind of core things that we look at in an IEP and for students with disabilities. How they'll build friendships, how they'll increase language acquisition, how they're going to access the curriculum, how they're going to actively participate in all school activities, including extracurricular activities. And then the big overarching outcome is, how are they going to be prepared for life after high school? How does this IEP this year get my child closer to being prepared for life after high school? And so these are very important, but when you're considering these things for students that may have difficulty communicating verbally, making sure that they have communication devices in place that will help them with their communication needs. It's also critical for students, again, to build those social networks and friendships and actively participate across settings. Trying to get this to switch to the next one, and it doesn't want to go. So let's do it that way. All right. So there is a process to get prepared. We kind of call this Advocacy 101. When you have concerns about your child and a specific skill area, you need to be very specific about what that is, what your concern is. And so I'm going to just give you a couple of steps here. If you're concerned about a specific skill area, first of all, write a statement about your concern. I'm concerned that Johnny has not made progress in reading this year. I'm concerned that he's falling further behind. I'm concerned that his behaviors are interfering with his learning, whatever that might be. And then any documentation that you have. Maybe you're concerned that about their spelling and their writing and those types of things. If you have school samples, if you have notes from the teacher that have come home that are concerned about your child interrupting in the classroom, or maybe they're being sent into the hallway a bunch and behavior is that is impacting their education. Any type of removal from the classroom is a removal from their education. So that maybe that's your concern, that they're being informally removed from class, going to the hallway, the principal's office, those types of things. So provide any documentation that you have, any recommendations that you have from a physician, a teacher, anyone else, those types of things. They all inform these decisions. And then talk about what is the educational impact. If this is not addressed, what is likely to happen? If my child continues to be suspended from school, he's going to fall farther and farther behind. If he continues to not close the gap in his reading, it's going to affect his self-esteem. It's going to affect his ability to move on to the next grade or to get that skill set. So what's likely to happen if this is not addressed? This is one of my questions that we use often, and I used with my daughter. If she doesn't have that particular speech and language therapy or intensive intervention, what's likely to happen? there's maybe that she's going to regress or she's not going to have the skill set that she needs. So express your concerns, how it impacts your child's education. And these are kind of 3 steps. And then calling an IEP meeting, say, I have some specific things that I want to address that are impacting my child's education. And we always say, ask for that IEP team meeting in writing. And I would say give them 3 times when you're available. So, what days and times might you be available to try to keep that to moving along so that you can end up with a meeting and address these concerns as quickly as possible. So the information you have about your child is super important. So you need to share what works for your child, what you know works. And one of the things that we share with families is a 1-page profile. And so these are something where you talk about what people like and admire about a particular student, what makes them happy, and then how do they need to be supported? What are the types of things that school personnel can do to support them? I love this because it can be shared with a bus driver, a speech language or another therapist. Anyone in the school building can know how to best support that school. Maybe they're school resource officers and they don't know some of the things in the way that would be best to support your student to help them and help them have, the best, more good days than bad days, we kind of say. So I'm going to try to switch my sharing now, if I can, and show you another document. Okay, Sue and gang, can you all see that?
We can, yes.
Okay, great. So this is just one example. This is Matthew, what people like and admire about me. And this can be an activity at an IEP meeting, part of this, and having the teachers give input about what they like and admire about a student. And for this student, he has a great sense of humor. He's really helpful. He always wants to help tidy up. There's some things that they like and admire. And then there's some things that make him happy. And so I like this part because when you look at what makes him happy, these are how you can build some social connections as well. So if you know that he likes cats, dogs, snakes, and reptiles, which I don't, I probably wouldn't want to be in that club with the snakes and reptiles. The cats and dogs are okay. But you can also find other students that would really like to interact with him. He likes reading books about animals, using the iPad. But one of the most important things is how he wants to be supported. So this gives the team really good insight. Don't rush me, right? That's something that I don't like to be rushed at. And my daughter in the mornings and anytime, you don't get the best her or the best me when we're being rushed. So planning things out, using signs to communicate when you talk, keep my hands busy or I get over enthusiastic, right? He likes only certain foods. He likes pasta, fruit, chocolate, and ice cream. And so these are some of the things that are ways that you can support him. Another example that I'll send when I send out these, and for in interest of time, I'm not going to try to switch over to it right now. But for instance, another student, when we were doing this with him and his family, this young man said things to know about him. He needs time to process information before responding. Does your team know that? And have you made that plain to them? He needs his personal space to be respected. And once he starts something, it's important for him to finish it. Sometimes these are included in a functional behavior assessment and a behavior intervention plan, but they don't have to be. They could be just in a 1-page profile and that gets attached to the IEP to say, please see his 1-page profile. Then it can be updated. But a lot of these things, if teachers know these and therapists and others, we're going to have more good days than bad days. how to successfully support this student, use positive behavior techniques, use short phrases, rewards, choices. Um, Tell this student ahead of time if there's going to be changes to the schedule or to his day. Um, Use short phrases if you need him to do something, not multiple step directions. So the one-page profile, there is a webinar on our YouTube channel on one-page profiles and lots of different examples of them, but this is a great tool that you can use for advocacy purposes. I'm going to go back to my other presentation now. All right. All right. One thing that sometimes we hear is that, Johnny cannot participate in this class or that class until he's ready and he needs certain skill set to be there and those kind of things. But the truth is that the opposite is actually true, that classrooms need to be ready for all students. And so looking at what does that classroom, how can that classroom be rearranged, designed, things put into place to support the child. Children do not have to meet a defined set of expectations to be ready for inclusion. Instead, those programs need to be prepared to include children. The program and staff should collaborate to get the skill sets that they need to support that student. And the least restrictive environment is a big component of IDEA. We call it inclusion. In IDEA, it's called LRE, or least restrictive environment. And this is a very important premise for students with disabilities. I'm going to give you a couple of ideas. If one of the things that you're thinking about advocating for is more inclusion for your child, and you've maybe been coming up against some barriers for that. Sometimes we don't know how to ask for certain things in the classroom or what could even possibly be available. So these are some things that classrooms, how they can be adapted to help inclusion be effective. I'm a big fan of inclusion if it's done with the right supports. So inclusion without supports is probably going to equal, as my one friend's son likes to say with a capital K, is chaos, right? It's just not going to work for anybody. It's going to lead to frustration for teachers, students, and the student that's being included. So thinking about it and putting these supports in place. So of course, adult support might be able to model certain behaviors or actions. They might be able to join the child in an activity, use praise, put into place some of these positive behavior supports that we were just talking about. Obviously, special equipment that the child might need to increase their access. Environmental support, of course, where they're seated, the amount of light, the amount of noise, those things in the environment, routines and schedules that will help promote that child to be successful and promote participation and engagement. Invisible supports might be things like having the materials already gathered for a particular activity that student's going to need. Some students get anxious if they have to go and get all the different pieces and they don't get to get right to what they're supposed to be doing. So looking at having those things ready, having things labeled, color coding some things, some visual schedules, like we talked about, knowing what comes next is often important. Of course, the preference of the child that they need, and there's a part on the IEP where you can have what their preferences are and what they need to support them. Adaptive materials, maybe they need something in large print, or maybe they need a worksheet that only has a few problems on it instead of 20, which can be overwhelming. We can talk a lot about accommodations and modifications. And then some peer supports might be helpful if you're working in small groups, if there's something that your child really is good at, that they like to do, giving them that part of the group assignment and having those peer-to-peer interactions is very helpful. So those are just some things that you could ask for the IEP to consider if you're talking about inclusion. We did talk about related services a little bit earlier, and these are very important component of the child's IEP. They are can be anything that's going to help your child be able to stay in school, access their education, participate in their education, and get to those outcomes that you guys as a team have written into their IEP. So I see Michelle said appropriately prepared modified content. Exactly. So modified content, if you just write the words on the page, is not going to help. It's going to be, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute, the who, what, why, where questions of who's going to do it, when's it going to be done, what are they going to have ready for them. Absolutely. Great point, Michelle. Thank you for putting that in there. So a lot of people think of related services maybe as just physical therapy, occupational therapy, those types of things. But as you're looking here, there are psychological services, recreation and therapeutic recreation, school nurse services, social work services, counseling services, orientation and mobility, um, medical services for the purposes of diagnosing and evaluating, school health services, and parent counseling and training. And again, this is not an exhaustive list. So some things are obvious, like transportation. If your child can't get to school, then they can't access their education. But some things are not as obvious, that maybe they need some mental health counseling or some other types of things. And you might need some parent training on some of the things that the school is doing and that are included in your child's plan. So supporting your child's functional needs could also be part of their related services, like their toileting, their self-help needs. Those types of things can all be encapsulated in related services. Okay, so this is like my favorite advocacy question of all time, is a fill in the blank, because a lot of times as families, we don't take time to give space for people to answer the question. We're trying to justify what we're asking for. So I'm going to say silence is good sometimes to ask the question. So we'll give an example here. It will be like, what would it take? And then you fill in the blank. So for instance, what will it take to help Susie have appropriate social interaction and build friendships? And let the school then say what that might take. Well, we would have to have someone that could start a social skills class. Maybe it would take someone being with her to monitor those social interactions. Maybe it would take someone to prompt Susie to stop talking about one topic and move to the other, whatever that might be. And when you ask that question as a parent, you're not just listening to what they're saying, you're writing those down. What will it take? So what would it take for Sarah to be included in the field trip that all the eighth graders are going to take? And as they say, oh, we'd have to have an adaptive bus or this or that, you write that down. And then at the end of that conversation, you say, okay, team, that's what I want to happen. How do we write that in the IEP? What goals do we need to write? Because that's the goal that we have for this student. So think about that particular thing as a strategy. What will it take to get a communication log so I know what's happening with my child at school and what steps I need to be doing in the afternoon at home? Those kind of things. Thinking about those, this question kind of changes the dynamics of the conversation a lot of times. Again, we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, but once you get these things happening, ask where is that in the IEP? If you said Karen's going to get Hershey's special dark chocolate every Friday, that's great. but where is it in the IEP? Because sometimes it'll be written parent requested X, and it doesn't say anything beyond that. If all your notes say or your IEP says is parent requested, it's not going to happen. It needs to say the parent requested and the school will provide X, Y, and Z. And then you can take it to the next level with a checklist. I always went with a checklist of the things that we were going to talk about. And if we agreed on something, said, where is that in the IEP? And if we didn't agree, asked for written notice, which is another one of your rights, is I need to know everything you considered to make that decision, and give me prior written notice. And that's a whole 30-minute or so conversation that we could have. But who will be in charge of making sure this gets implemented? Whatever it is in the IEP, when will it start? How will I know it's working? How are you going to measure this progress? These are your who, what, why questions that we're going to show you a little bit more about. Least restrictive environment, again, is the last discussion that you really have at an IEP meeting. You write your goals and objectives and talk about your services. And then you talk about where will my child receive these services. And they needs to be very clear that it's one of the most important decisions, and you are part of the team that makes that decisions. It is based on the student's strengths, their current level of performance, their annual goals, the accommodations that they need. It is not based on administrative convenience or the level of staffing that might be needed in order for a student to be successful in a least restrictive environment. And it's often people think it's one or the other. They're going to be in a special education segregated setting, or they're going to be an inclusive opportunity. It can be a continuum, and many students receive services in a variety of settings across their school day, based on what their needs. So it could be general education, it could be a special education classroom, it could be work-based learning if they're at that age where they're going off campus to learn things. Special education could be provided in the cafeteria. It could be provided in the school bus garage if your student is learning about transportation and about getting ready for how to change oil and things like that. So just saying it's not one or the other, it's this continuum. And also thinking about that every student is a general education student first. Keep that in mind, that they are not just a special education student, but they are a general education student first. So where is their homeroom with their typical peers, where they start out, where they make those friendships, where they make those connections? And one of the things that was very helpful to me, every day, I just asked for a copy of the announcements that they made every morning to be sent home with Sarah in the afternoon. I had no idea sometimes what was happening in the school. And one of the ways that you can increase your child's social interaction is to know what's happening if they're having a food drive or they're having a fall festival or this or that. And if your child is like mine, I would say, what happened at school today? Nothing. How was school? Good. Um, what's coming up? Nothing. So that's just an accommodation you can ask for. If you have a child with some communication needs and they're not going to be able to share those types of things with you, that really helped me to be able to connect our family to what was happening with the school, but also to connect Sarah to those things as well. So just have a couple more things and then we'll open this up to see if folks have questions, comments, or other good suggestions of things that you have used that have been successful in your advocacy journey as well. So this is my who, what, why, where, when, and how questions, and that I highly suggest that you use when you're attending your child's IEP meeting. Write those questions out and when you ask a specific question, get that answer. Who's going to be in charge again of making this, helping this be implemented? When will it start? How will I know it's working? And keep asking questions. It's up to the school to address those concerns and put a plan in place. One of the things that I wanted to share with you, and Sue will give you a copy of this. I won't switch slides to it right now, but there are 4 communication strategies that go along with this asking questions. And as families, sometimes we're intimidated to ask a lot of questions, but this is very important. It's more important than buying a car or buying a house. This agreement, if it's not written in this IEP plan, it's as if it didn't happen. So it's very important that you ask these questions. So a couple communication strategies, checking the time. Number 1, keep your focus positive. Talk about the things that have gone well. If they've implemented something, say, I really appreciate Mrs. Jones because she put this in place and now my child is doing this or that. Try to stay as positive as you can. Um, and assume that everybody wants to do what's best for your child. You just sometimes have to lead the way in that discussion. Prioritize and plan. We talked about that. There might be 10 things that are on your mind at one time, but I would say pick the top 2 or 3 things and prioritize those and get those things settled and into the IEP. So what we have some suggested language here. What's most important for Jordan right now is, and I'd like for the team to focus on that for right now. So whatever that fill in the blank is, plan how you will map that out. And number 3 is actively listening to understand the other person's perspective. So you can be very direct. I don't understand what you're saying. Can you say that another way? I don't understand why Sarah can't be included in the 8th grade field trip. Or you might say, can you give me some examples of what you're saying? Is there something you can show me in writing so that I can fully understand? So anytime that at an IEP team meeting, a school is saying there's a particular school policy or rule that is impacting your child and your ability to get to that outcome that you want, ask to see that policy, ask to show them in writing so that you can fully understand. The 4th step would be clarify your statements. If you see a puzzled expression on someone's face, just say, I must not be explaining what I'm asking for clearly yet. What I'm trying to say is this, and just say it in another way. Say why it's important to you. Restate why it's important for your child. In the end, ask for a yes. Sometimes you go around and around in an IEP meeting for a couple hours, and at the end, you don't have anything resolved. So as you communicate and negotiate, you'll uncover areas where you may agree on an issue that's being addressed, but not completely agree how to address it. So when this happens, it's especially helpful to restate and discuss the options. What I heard you saying is that it's possible for us to do this and this. It also means, just asking those direct questions. I really feel like Johnny needs this. Who has some ideas on how we can make this happen? So I'll send you some of those. Those are just phrases to keep in mind that will keep the IEP moving. Again, asking questions. Don't ask a yes or no question. Can Sarah have more physical therapy? Once you say no, you kind of close the door. So let's talk about the goals that we're trying to achieve, the lack of progress, if there is lack of progress that's been made, and what additional things need to happen in order to meet these goals and objectives. Because we don't want to have the same IEP next year that we had this year. The IDEA is very specific that there's supposed to be and must be measurable progress. So we have to move from getting these goals accomplished to moving on to the next things that we want to accomplish. And finally, I will say establish an agreed upon way to communicate. Who should I call if I have a question about speech therapy? Who should I call if I have a question about their reading progress? Who should I call if I have questions, or who should I contact, I should say, if I have questions about their behavior plan. Sometimes the school has an app. Some teachers use email. Some do text messaging. Some prefer to meet during planning time. Drop off and pick up if a teacher is on bus duty or pickup duty is probably not the best time to say, oh, by the way, Miss Smith, I really have this concern. So just say that at the meeting, and this is going to help you effectively advocate and figure out what's the best time for you to communicate, the best way for them to communicate. And what we're trying to do is build those relationships, because unless you move to a different city, county, or country, you're going to be working with these same people for multiple years. So we really want to build those partnerships with families across time. So I'm going to open this up for questions and comments. If you want to put them in the chat box, and Sue, if you've seen any questions specifically that individuals would like for me to address, we have about 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, I don't see anything right now, but while people are thinking about their questions, I did also want to mention, Karen mentioned our team, and I do have Jenny Reed here on, and she's been helping us with a variety of things during this training. So I wanted to kind of give her an introduction, because she's one of our newer members of our team and works with the early childhood people. She does a lot of the things that I do, but only better. So I wanted you to see her face as well.
Great. So while we're looking for any questions, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jenny.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just saying thank you to Sue.
Oh, okay. While we're waiting to see if you have any questions or comments, is there one thing from this training, a strategy that you picked up that you think will be helpful? If you feel like sharing that, you can put that in the chat box as well. We've ended with this slide, asking questions, asking for data. And I think that's really important, and something that is often overlooked, is asking for the data. What is that data based? What is that decision based on? What is the data that you have? How can we collect some more data? Thank you, Rosalind, asking for a yes. So bringing those discussions to a conclusion, and is very, very important. I always like this strategy of following up in writing. It's my understanding that we agreed that you would do X, Y, Z, whatever that might be. Again, making sure those things are in the IEP that you talked about. We talked about this. Can you show me where it is? Where did it get written in the IEP? Those are very important, pulling these things all to a conclusion on these in working with an IEP. Okay. Any comments or questions? Okay, so
There
the
is in the
question.
You got it?
Yes, I got it. Give tips on the interaction with teachers, speech therapists, autism support, and things that can be implemented without an IEP team meeting. Okay, so I'm not sure, Amara, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but if you're talking about things like maybe the one-page profile, things that you could ask, work with a therapist so that they could better support your child outside of the classroom. I guess I need a little bit of clarification on that. And yes, we'll definitely send a copy of the PowerPoint and about 3 or 4 other documents that you can use to make reference to. I'll see if you have any clarification on things that can be implemented without a meeting. Basically, the IEP is going to drive the services that happen for your child. So making sure that all of those related services and those direct instructions are in there. Okay, the behavior support in the classroom, yes. So one of the handouts that we're going to send goes along with that classroom support grid, and it has a lot of suggestions in that. So again, it might be for the classroom, having a visual schedule, making sure the student can take some breaks, talking to them about if your child needs some sensory things in the classroom, of course, you would want that to be in the IEP so that they can have those sensory breaks that they need. People knowing how to redirect your student if and knowing what are the signs that they may be intensifying in their behavior and they need to have a break. So those are some things that the therapist and the teachers and you can work on. And you could put that in a one-page profile to make it real easy for the teacher to access, or even a functional behavioral assessment. We had a question, what can be done if a child's lack of focus is an impediment to learning and instruction? So again, I would look at what data do you have, both from evaluations the school have done and any private evaluations, what suggestions are in there. One of the things that often is not as used as it could be is we get a diagnosis and it says Johnny has attention issues, and at the bottom it says things that you could do to help him better focus. For instance, like I said, only having 2 or 3 things on a page instead of 20, checking in with them. Sometimes we have, with all students, we'll ask for a green light, red light on their desk. It doesn't have to be just your child with special needs. And a child can just flip that over if they need more information about the instructions that were given. There might be some word prompts that you work for your son that could bring him back to focus on the particular task. So there are quite a few things that can be done, but I would say as a starting point, looking at those evaluations that have been done, pulling out those nuggets of information and then saying, how can we embed these things that have already been suggested? One of the things I didn't mention, when you're looking for accommodations, and just like you're talking about, you guys are going to think this is silly, but it really works, is I sometimes Google best suggestions to keep a student with focused in the classroom, right? And there's going to come up bunches of suggestions, but you know your child. So when you look through those suggestions that came up, you might go, oh, I think that one might work and that one might work. So same thing. You just Google those things on how to support a child with autism's behavior to keep their hands in their own personal space. Things are going to come up. And then talk with your therapist, talk with your providers, your teachers, and others to come up with those strategies that are going to be a match for your child. Does a family situation affect the IEP goals? And so I'm not sure if what specifically that question means, but I'm not sure if that means if a family is able to do certain things that it can't go in an IEP. So if I could have just a little bit of clarity on that one, I think I could answer it a little more specifically. We have a specific question about early intervention education, and they don't have educational delays, but they have behavioral and struggling with focus in the daycare. I think you would just ask for a comprehensive evaluation, Sabrina, to talk about if that student's lack of focus and their behavior issues impact their education and meet the criteria, that it may meet the criteria of other health impaired, which often addresses things that are not academic delays, but they are other things that impede their access to their education. And certainly, I think you could call Jenny or myself, and we can help you with that more specifically.
Yes, and I just included, Sabrina, the phone number for the, excuse me, for the Child Find office here with Knox County. So please feel free to call us here. We'd be happy to talk with you about any concerns that you have for your preschool age child and help you come up with some solutions, or we'd be happy to, complete an evaluation like Karen mentioned.
Okay, and at the end of, let me go ahead and put in here in the chat box my email address. I saw, Sabrina, that you shared your phone number. I'm not sure if I can pull that off of there, but I would love for you to email me and anyone else here that has a specific question. I did see as we wind this up, there was, do IEPs, do you have goals for home too? And so the IEP goals are those skill sets that a student needs to be successful in school, but sometimes having things that getting how to prepare that child at home to go to school. A lot of times we have students that are kind of refuse to get ready or things like that. Those would fall into some of those related services such as social work services and some of those other services. So feel free to call me or email me with more specific questions there on that particular piece. And home and school working together is ends up with this confidence, positive, and teamwork that we're talking about here. And that definitely you can have things that families are working on, schools are working on, and you're working on them together. So I'm going to end with that. So we're on time. We do have, you can follow us on Facebook. You can look at tnstep.info for more information, and definitely very shortly we will get these materials out so that you can have them in your hands for these upcoming IEP meetings.
And I will answer one question. We are recording, so that's going to be something that's going to be available on our website probably in the next couple of days. It may be a week, kind of depends on how quickly we can get that out. But that will also be on the special education website as well as the parent engagement website. So Karen, I always enjoy listening to Karen speak. One of her great strengths is she's very good about giving very concrete information and very concrete examples. And just one side note, I did want to mention when she was talking about who you contact, generally in Knox County, that your main contact person is your case manager, who is the person who's assigned to your child that is a special education teacher. And depending on their age group and what's going on, they may or may not be in that classroom during the school year. Also, you're certainly always welcome to contact me if you have questions or concerns. And we are right about on time. So I do appreciate all of you. And I hope to see you at the Family Information Fair at Bearden on Thursday. So have a great rest of the day.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.